In our work with attachment, we see over and over that secure relationships are built on honesty and openness. Our brains need our inner world and our outer world to match. When they don't, when something is hidden or out of alignment, it naturally creates anxiety, tension, and most of all, a sense of disconnection between partners.
Yes, we found that this kind of healthy alignment grows best when one really important core value is present: integrity. In a secure relationship with ourselves, with others, and with God, integrity becomes one of the most stabilizing forces we can have. It helps our life feel steady, grounded, and whole.
We hope you'll join us for our next podcast where we will talk about integrity, which is a stabilizing force in a secure relationship.
Do you sometimes feel lost in your relationships, your identity, or even your spirituality? Welcome to Gilmore&green, where healing and hope meet.
We are marriage and family therapists and relationship experts who care deeply about helping you grow, strengthen your relationships, and deepen your sense of meaning and spirituality.
We long to share from our clinical experience, years of training and solid research, including ideas about how to strengthen the things that matter the most to all of us in life.
We're so glad you're here. Our hope is to share simple, meaningful ideas that support you in your healing and in your growth. Welcome to Gilmore&green, where healing and hope meet. I'm Dr. Debi Gilmore, a licensed marriage and family therapist.
And I'm Sharilyn Green, also a marriage and family therapist. We're hoping that you'll take a moment and just think about someone in your life whose word you can count on. Somebody who follows through, someone who's consistent, and who carries this kind of quiet confidence because who they are on the inside matches who they are on the outside. When we describe people like this, and we all know people like this, we usually say that's a person with integrity, right? It's someone we can trust. And Debbie, when I think about people like this in my own life, they actually are my favorite people to be around. They're my favorite people to work with. I feel safe with them. I trust them. I have a good sense of how they're going to respond. And that makes my life feel more predictable and secure.
You know why? Here's why, because I feel the same. When they speak with you that way, their behavior is consistent. When we know that they have integrity, when we're not with them, that goes with us. We just know. We have this sense of trust.
Yeah, so it's not something that we admire just in others. It's something I think that we all really hope to develop more fully in ourselves. We have a sense, I think an inner sense of how important this is. And not in just ourselves and others, but even for our whole world to function well, right? When integrity is missing in relationships, in information, in agreements, in business, that's when we can feel trust starting to erode and things begin to unravel. Personal integrity, which is the seedbed of all this, right? It's not just about honesty or honor. It's actually about a wholeness, right? When our values, our words, and our actions line up. There's this kind of inner congruence that's vital for our emotional health and well-being. In many ways, and I love it saying it this way, integrity means living a life that isn't divided. So in our attachment relationships, again with ourselves and others with God, integrity becomes such an important core value, such a vehicle to obtaining this kind of integrity and congruence that's so much a part of wholehearted living.
Yes, that's true, because when we work with people who've been traumatized, we consider them fragmented. They've got these memories that are hijacking them. They're not whole. And this is similar. When we don't have integrity, we have fragmented parts of us that we have to keep secret or we have to hang on to, and it destabilizes us in general. So in our work with clients, we focus a lot on attachment science. You've heard us talk about this before. It helps people build secure connections with themselves and with others. And it's frankly a universal need to connect with others. And so attachment is essential. But one thing we know is that secure attachment grows when our inner world is in alignment with how we live on the outside. That sense of congruency is so important for our brains and how we function day to day. When that alignment is missing, anxiety, tension, and disconnection tends to increase. Many people grow up in insecure attachment systems, families where They learn to split off parts of themselves. It's really a protective factor, actually, just to preserve connection. And so integrity is the courageous work of bringing those parts back together again. So, what is integrity? You, Sherilyn, mentioned it's not just honesty and honor. What is integrity? Integrity isn't about being perfect, it's about being integrated, whole. It's when our inner world and our outer world behavior match. Even when life is stressful or we're under pressure, integrity isn't about rigid rules or judging others. It's really about emotional honesty and internal alignment, personal alignment. It includes honesty, it includes consistency, and living in such a way that reflects the values we believe in. Those are at our core, even when no one else is watching. This idea of attachment security with ourselves, with others, with the spirit depends a lot on predictability and emotional safety. When we live with integrity, we become more predictable to ourselves, to the people around us. Our brain can settle because what we say, what we feel, what we do are all in alignment. And that alignment is what builds trust.
Yeah, Debbie. So I'm wondering, I'm asking myself the question, what does integrity look like then inside of me, right? If I were to look at inside of myself, what would that look like inside? And as I think about it, it's when our thoughts, like you said, emotions and values and behaviors actually line up so our system can feel more regulated, right? There's a feeling inside of us that things are regulated. There's a sense of internal alignment that brings peace. It brings consistency again, transparency, and calm. When we live this way, there's a feeling of being grounded, and the people around us can feel that too. So, integrity on the inside supports this secure functioning that we're talking about. In an opposite way, what does it feel like inside when there's a lack of integrity? When we repeatedly betray ourselves, ignoring what we truly feel or need or believe. And we know, again, in our clinical work with clients, when they're out of alignment with that inside integrity, that there's a lot of anxiety and tension that increases. There's an emotional exhaustion because they're often using so much energy to perform or even manage how they appear instead of simply being authentic. So one of the things we can ask ourselves as we look inside, how is the integrity inside of me? Are there parts that are split or out of alignment? Am I feeling fragmented? Because another factor is that our brains, our nervous systems start to feel like things aren't matching up. One example of this that I can do a check in is when I say yes to something that I actually resent, my nervous system knows that. I am now becoming divided. I might look calm on the outside saying yes to someone, but on the inside now I'm split with my personal integrity, right, is now at risk.
Several times you and I have both talked about alignment. And I think about periodically, I think it's every 6 months, we need to align our tires on our car. Why? Because if we don't do that, they will wear differently. They will wear out sooner, and tires aren't cheap. So finding alignment brings integrity to the system of the tires on the car. That's really what we're talking about, lining up with ourselves, becoming whole. So let's focus in just specifically right now on integrity with self. We can start to evaluate our own integrity by asking ourselves a few honest questions. This we do in private and really sitting with the answers. Be honest with yourself. Do I tell the truth? Do I tell the truth about my feelings and my opinions? Am I predictable? Am I consistent? Do I honor my limits, or I might say my boundaries that I've put in place to protect my own self? Do I allow myself to have needs? Do I abandon myself just to avoid conflict? That's pleasing others, basically betraying ourselves and our own needs. Do my actions line up with my core values? Do I keep promises I make to myself? Do I live authentically? Does my private life match my public life? These are powerful questions. These kinds of questions help us gently notice where we might be living in alignment or out of it. And so, because we can betray ourselves just to preserve connection with others, something inside of us fractures. When we do that, we are betraying our own boundaries. And over time, that internal fracture makes real connection harder, not easier. We tend to close off from others.
Yeah, I love that you said, it may feel simpler to do that in the moment, but there is a long-term cost to doing this over and over again in our lives. And so, Debbie, I just want to mention some of the common signs then of maybe self-betrayal. You've talked about what integrity looks like with some really great questions, but maybe some signs too of when we're in self-betrayal would be dishonesty, right? When we're not honest, rationalizing behavior that we know isn't right, avoiding accountability, chronic over accommodation, saying yes when we really mean no, suppressing emotions so we can appear strong. I like that one. Living behind competence armor. We've talked before in other podcasts how that can get in the way of secure connection with others. We become unapproachable. So it can be a form of self-betrayal, right? To live behind competence armor and performing goodness instead of truly embodying it. So there's that performance, right? Where we're on stage, we're not authentically living. And then I love this one too, breaking commitments that we've made to ourselves. You mentioned that too, that we keep promises to ourselves. So a secure attachment in every area of our lives begins, of course, with being connected to ourselves. If we're internally divided, it becomes so much harder to show up with real, authentic emotional presence for someone else.
To show up with real emotional presence. And then the other thing you said was performing goodness instead of truly having it become who we are. It becomes apparent to those that really know us when we are not being honest and full of integrity for ourselves. There's something missing. So now let's talk about integrity with others in our relationships. For example, marriage. This is one that we deal with all the time in our clinical work. Secure attachment and connection in marriage depends a lot on predictability, and that comes from integrity. Our partner doesn't have to constantly guess what's going on or what might happen next. Instead, there's a steadiness between us that helps both our brains settle. It's the question, can I rely on you? And we can immediately answer yes. For example, if we say to our partner, I'm fine, but inside we're resentful or pulling away, shutting down, our partner can feel it. They can feel that split. Even if they can't quite put words to it, they can sense it. Marriage is also a place where it's easy to slip into fear-based ways of coping. We might avoid hard conversations, becoming dysregulated, in distress internally, over functioning to keep peace, or hide behind competence. We've talked about that instead of expressing our needs, which we're afraid to do because we might seem weak or disrespectful even. In the moment, it can feel like we're keeping things calm, but often we're choosing short-term peace that eventually turns into long-term resentment and disconnection. So, integrity in marriage means owning our reactivity when things are hard, repairing quickly when we hurt each other, and working to stay aligned, co-regulated, even when emotions are running high. So, authenticity is another integrity word. Authenticity in marriage grows as the sense of threat decreases. In the science of attachment, we call this secure functioning. When we keep our promises, admit mistakes. That's hard because we don't want to be seen as imperfect or less than, we're not good enough. So it's so hard to say, I made a mistake, please forgive me. But when we can keep those promises, admit our mistakes quickly, avoid gaslighting or manipulating for reassurance, and when we don't weaponize vulnerability, when our partner becomes vulnerable and we use that against them, our partner can feel safe and secure with us when we don't do those things.
Yeah, I'm thinking as you're talking, about integrity with others, that marriage is probably the most intimate place where integrity
Yeah.
shows. right? It's such an intimate relationship with our partners. It's so critically important here. But Debbie, I want to talk about another place with others that's equally important, and that's in our parenting, right? We know that children are especially sensitive when things don't match up. They can pick up on a tone that's out of alignment, inconsistency, emotional masking. They're just sensitive to these things. So if a parent, for example, says, I'm not upset, but the child can, clearly feel that there's tension, then they often read that as danger. So simple ways to handle this in parenting is to be honest in a calm way and be honest, right? I'm feeling frustrated right now. I just need a minute to calm down, but I'm still here and I still love you. I hear my son and daughter-in-law do that so well. They're honest about the stress or what's happening and always follow up with, I love you, I'm here. I've seen that in action and how settling the honesty and the integrity of feeling is for kids.
And actually, we're modeling for the child. It's okay to admit how we're really feeling and to press pause and take the time that it takes to come back to the ground and be grounded.
Love that. Yes, we're modeling for them that that's how we can do this with integrity, right? We're
Yeah.
honest about how we feel, but also they're showing up with regulation. And so, yeah, we parent with modeling in other ways. We show what it's like to admit when we've made mistakes. We show what it's like to be able to apologize, to live the values that we're teaching. I mean, the hypocrisy of that for kids, right? They pick that up so quickly. You do what I say, not what I do, right? So that's so important with kids watching to keep our commitments to our children. That's such an important thing as parents that kids can count on us doing what we say we'll do. And then setting healthy boundaries with love and consistency. And so, yeah, as we talked about, when we are modeling these kinds of things in our parenting, children learn that feelings and values can exist together, right? That conflict doesn't mean that everything falls apart. We're actually modeling what it looks like to be whole. It's also important to never make children responsible for our own emotional stability. Instead, we can show them healthy vulnerability, rather hiding again behind competence or pretending that we have it all together. Children need to see authentically that we struggle too. We make mistakes and how to recover from that. They don't need perfect parents. What they need are parents who are congruent, who are accountable, who are predictable. There's that word again, and steady. I love that word, especially when life gets stressful. Probably that's the most powerful place that our integrity shows up is in those stressful moments when we can show up in regulated ways of integrity.
So, what you're talking about here, you said children don't need perfect parents. In fact, 30% good parenting is pretty good, because we are human and we struggle. But if we are always accountable for our own mistakes, predictable, I've had so many clients come in and a very simple commitment that their parent made, I will be at your game, and they don't show up. That comes back in adulthood. I've had them sit and cry over that because there was no explanation. The parent just didn't show up. When parents are steady, even when they're stressed, that and then they own it, they're accountable to that. The child feels secure. So now let's talk about integrity with others in generalities. It's when we do what we say we'll do, when we follow through with whatever commitments that we've made to someone. And if we can't, we own it and repair quickly. Our word can be counted on. Are you a person of your word? When we can tell the truth, and that takes cultivating the courage to own our mistakes, when we can respond to our own longings, not accusations that the other is the person that's the fault. When we don't manipulate for connection to get what we want, we show up with honesty, authenticity, we show up with compassion, real compassion in our relationships.
Yeah, just going back to that first question we asked at the beginning of the podcast, who do you know in your life that follows these things? And again, I want to sit and think about that because as you're talking, I'm thinking about specific people in my life that model this for me and how much I love again interacting with them and being around them. So Debbie, I want to talk now or with you about another place that integrity is important. We we care about spirituality in our podcast with God, with a higher power. And so there's an important conversation, I think, about integrity with God or whoever we look to for a higher power. And so when integrity with God is in alignment, we're not performing again spiritually. That can happen, right? In our spiritual lives where we're performing, we want to be authentic in our practices and our beliefs and our relationship with Him. We don't try to hide our doubts. This can be a common problem in organized religion where we can almost feel punished or it's scary to talk about our doubts authentically. So to be able to be authentic and say, hey, I'm not sure about this. There's something so, again, authentic about being able to do that. We live our values both privately and publicly, right? If someone were to see the way we act inside our homes, it would align with the way that we act outside of our homes. You see God as a secure base, again, where no performance or emotional masking is required. I love the thought of this secure attachment with God and how it becomes spiritual wholeness and well-being. I'm thinking of a particular friend in my life who tells me often that her husband is what you see in his public life is the way he is in his private life. And she said to me one day, one of his, probably the guiding goal of his life is that I want God to be able to trust me when no one is looking. I've never forgotten that. She probably told me that 15 years ago. And I've just been struck by that there's a consistency between, he was a very well-known person in our community. And so that what you see out there is what we see inside of our home. And that one of the things that guided that for him is that he wanted his God to trust when no one was looking that he would do the right thing. I'm also, one of my favorite stories is Corrie ten Boom in The Hiding Place. It's one of my favorite books, and I know many of us have read that, but she's another person I look to who was so congruent in her beliefs and her convictions against really dangerous circumstances. One of our favorite parts in that book is when one of the SS guards that was really terrible to her and her sister in a concentration camp asked for her forgiveness, and she was able to do that, I think, because of her integrity with her God and her values. And I'm just inspired by people like this in my life that have this kind of integrity that we're talking about.
The way that you've described these friends or 10 booms in the book, The Hiding Place, their spirituality, their congruency, their integrity spiritually becomes a part of them at the cellular level. Performing spiritually doesn't benefit us the way it's meant to. Spirituality isn't performing for others. It's being able to heal our own internal pain and connect with God in such a way that it protects us, it makes us better, it empowers us. And so when you talk about these individuals who live this, they live it because they love it. And performing spiritually isn't because you love it, it's because that's what you're supposed to do in order to be accepted or to be seen as something else. Performing spiritually is just like an actor assuming a role on stage, and when they step off that stage, it goes away. That is not integrity. That's not consistency. So, what gets in the way of integrity? Well, I mentioned one thing, it takes courage, to be honest, but the truth is, integrity often asks us to tolerate some discomfort. Think about it. That's not easy to say, oh, I made a mistake. I'm the reason that didn't go well. But sometimes we don't want to disappoint people. But I want to point out disappointment is a normal human experience. But when we don't want to disappoint people, we end up abandoning ourselves. And sometimes we're afraid of disconnection or rejection because when we disappoint someone, they may disconnect from us. They might push us away, and that is painful. There is that risk, but the risk overall, it outweighs what it's like when we are not full of integrity. That's painful. It's disconnecting overall. We might be afraid to show our own vulnerabilities or worried that if people see the real us, they might leave. That fear of abandonment really is a universal feeling, except for those that are so intently secure and have lived with security and those with integrity. But fear of abandonment can lead us to say and do things that don't actually line up with what we feel or what we believe. just to avoid the fear of abandonment. Shame, that's a big one. The I am just plain bad. When we tell ourselves that, it blocks our ability to be full of integrity. When we feel ashamed, we tend to hide parts of ourselves. We shrink away instead of living openly, fully, and honestly. There's a few other things that get in the way of integrity, the need for approval. That again is that insecurity about self, building our own identity around competence or achievements instead of authenticity of what we are internally, who we really are, our identity. Old trauma survival strategies are really what keeps us from being full of integrity. So when those triggers happen and we shrink away, it's trying to protect from that old trauma. We need help to be able to clear that so we can regain our integrity. And getting stuck in rigid roles like the rescuer, I'm the rescuer, I'm the strong one, I'm the peacemaker. So I can't be authentic. I have to play a role. So living with integrity can sometimes make things uncomfortable in the short term, but over time, it creates something much more valuable, true peace and steadiness inside of our soul.
I think we want to end this podcast with some of the great benefits of living with integrity. When things begin to shift inside of us, when we become more aligned and congruent, the beautiful results of that is our anxiety tends to decrease, right? Our resentments soften. We often gain more clarity. Our relationships become more stable. Our faith often deepens. Our self respect grows stronger. And we start to trust ourselves more. And other people start to experience us as more steady and reliable, someone they can count on and trust. And we also we're able to tolerate being seen, right? To be more exposed, maybe by ourselves, by others, and by God. And as that happens, any kind of shame that we struggle or suffer with will decrease. And in its place, this beautiful confidence starts to grow. So again, integrity creates an inner sense of this coherent that allows our brains and our nervous system to settle. It brings relational safety. It's such a wholehearted way of living. And in many ways, we understand from our attachment science that it's kind of the glue that holds it all in place.
As I think about this, I'm thinking this would be the one most important thing that we want to teach our children. So they become such amazing adults. It governs everything we do, everything we think. And so it's so essential. So if integrity is such a stabilizing force in our relationships with ourselves, others, and God, then an important question is this. Ask yourself, where am I divided?
Mm. Yeah, and where might I be choosing short-term comfort at the expense of long-term peace? We're to our therefore what, Debbie, and I actually want to just accept the invitation that you just said to look more closely where I may be divided and the consequences of that, right? The cost of that in myself, with others, and with the God I worship. And so I'm going to go away and be more intentional about looking at the places that I may be divided and need to be more aligned with this incredible core value of integrity that we were talking about today.
Oh, I love that. That you're going to take on that challenge. I too need to do that. I think the way that I will do that, my therefore what is make that the theme of the day. Ask myself, am I living with integrity? Periodically do a self check. That's what I'm going to do because I think we need to be intentional. If we're going to shift into more authenticity, we have to think about it and become aware of those moments when we avoid discomfort or try to. But the discomfort will come when we reject integrity. So I'm going to do that at the start of my day. Say, am I going to live with integrity? At the end of the day, check, did I? Thank you so much for listening today. We hope you'll continue to join us.
We love doing this together and being with you. Thank you so much.